200 species had gathered to watch the Renali die, not with weapons or violence, but with something far more cruel, a vote. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of station meridian, its curved walls lined with floating platforms where representatives from every corner of known space sat in judgment. Today, they would decide if an entire civilization deserved to starve. Speaker Talon stood alone at the central podium, his silver-blue skin had faded with age, and his forearms trembled slightly as he gripped the speaking rail. Behind him, a holographic display showed his homeworld, Sylvan, a planet of gentle oceans and floating cities. Soon, it might become a graveyard. The Renali petition for mercy, he said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. We have committed no crime. The technology we developed was meant to heal, not harm. High Arbiter Dren leaned forward from his elevated seat. He was Vorith, a species that had dominated galactic politics for 6,000 years. His gray flesh was marked with ritual scars, and his eyes held the cold patience of a predator. The law is clear, Dren replied, unregistered technology development is forbidden. Your people created medical advances without submitting them for assembly approval. The penalty is total economic sanction. Talon knew what that meant. No trade, no food imports, no medicine from allied worlds. Sylvan could not sustain itself alone. Within 3 years, billions would die. We offered to share our research freely, Talon pleaded. We asked only that it be distributed to all species equally. This is why we are being punished, because we refused to give it exclusively to the hegemony. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew the truth, but no one dared speak it. The Vorith wanted the Renali's life extension technology for themselves. When the Renali refused to comply, the accusations began. Dren's expression did not change. These conspiracy theories waste the assembly's time. We will proceed to vote. Talon closed his eyes. He had tried everything, diplomacy, negotiation, even bribery. Nothing worked. The Vorith had too much influence, and the Renali had too few friends. Then the doors opened. Every head turned. The massive entrance gates of the assembly hall had not been used in decades. They were ceremonial, a relic from an age when physical presence mattered more than holographic projection. Now they swung wide, and through them walked a delegation that made even the Vorith pause. Humans. Admiral Nora Webb led them. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face weathered by decades of service. Her uniform bore no decorations except a single patch, a stylized flame surrounding 2 clasped hands. Behind her walked 12 officers and Ambassador Ruth Cole, Earth's senior diplomatic voice. This assembly has not recognized the human delegation, Dren said sharply. You were not invited to speak, Admiral. Webb stopped at the center of the chamber. She looked up at the High Arbiter without fear. I invoke the right of debt recognition, she said. Her voice was quiet but carried perfectly through the hall's acoustic systems. Under Section 7 of the Founding Charter, any species may testify when a recognized debt exists between them and a condemned party. Silence fell. The right of debt recognition was ancient law, so old that most species had forgotten it existed. It had been written in an age when honor between species still meant something. Dren's eyes narrowed. What debt could humanity possibly owe the Renali? Webb turned slowly, addressing not just the Arbiter but the entire assembly. 180 years ago, humanity was nothing, she began. We had 3 colony worlds and a defense fleet so small it would make you laugh. We were new to the galaxy, and we were dying. She paused, letting the words settle. The Vorik swarm came for our colony on New Eden, 10 million. Humans, farmers, teachers, children. The swarm wanted our world, and they did not care if we lived or died. We sent distress signals to this assembly. Do you know what answer we received? No one spoke. Nothing, Webb continued. Not one ship, not one message of support. We were told that humanity was not worth the risk. We were told to accept our fate. Her gaze found Speaker Talon, and something passed between them. A recognition that transcended politics. But the Renali came. Commander Scylla brought 40 warships against her own government's orders. She and her crews knew they would be branded traitors. They knew they might die. They came anyway. Admiral Webb reached into her jacket and withdrew a small data chip. I carry the recording of Commander Scylla's final transmission. Her flagship was destroyed protecting our evacuation transports. Her last words were, "Remember that we chose you when no one else would." She placed the chip on the podium before her. Humanity remembers. We have remembered for 180 years. We teach this story to every child. We carved Commander Scylla's name into the memorial wall on Earth, and we made a promise, that if the Renali ever needed us, we would come. Webb turned back to face High Arbiter Dren. We are here, and this vote will not proceed until you hear what humanity has to say. The assembly hall erupted in whispers and confusion. Speaker Talon stared at the human admiral with tears forming in his ancient eyes. He had not expected anyone to remember, but humans never forget. The sky above New Eden had turned orange with burning ships. Captain Darian Webb watched from the command center as another human destroyer broke apart in the upper atmosphere, its debris scattered across the horizon like falling stars, each piece representing sailors who would never return home. He was 29 years old, and he was watching his species die. Vorax carriers are entering the second orbital ring, his tactical officer reported. Her voice shook despite her efforts to remain professional. We have lost the Resolute and the Dawn Chaser, only 11 ships remain. Darian gripped the edge of his console. The numbers made no sense. Humanity had brought their entire colonial defense fleet to New Eden, and it barely counted as a speed bump for the swarm. The Vorax had sent over 3,000 vessels. They moved through space like a living plague, consuming everything in their path. What about the evacuation transports? He asked. 60% of civilians are still groundside. The Vorax interceptors are hunting our shuttles. We cannot get them to orbit fast enough. 6 million people, 6 million humans who had come to New Eden seeking a new life, and now they huddled in underground shelters while monsters circled overhead. Among them was Darian's younger sister and her 2 children. He had promised to keep them safe. Governor Hilda Brandt appeared on his screen. She was an older woman with steel-gray hair, and she had built New Eden from bare rock over 30 years. Now she watched it burn. Captain Webb, I need options, she said. There are no good options, Governor. Our fleet can hold for maybe 6 more hours. After that, the Vorax will have full orbital control. They will begin planetary bombardment. Brandt's jaw tightened, and the Galactic Assembly, they declined to intervene. The official response called humanity a developing species below the threshold of strategic relevance. The governor closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they held a fierce resolve. Then we hold as long as we can. Every minute we buy is another shuttle that might escape. Every hour is another family that reaches the emergency jump points. Darian nodded. It was not a victory, it was a death sentence accepted with dignity. He began plotting their final defensive formation. Then his communications officer made a sound that was almost a sob. Captain, new contacts. 40 ships just exited faster than light travel at the system's edge. Darian's heart sank. More Vorax. The universe was not satisfied with 3,000 enemies. It wanted to add 40 more. Identify them, he ordered. Sir, the officer's voice cracked. They are not Vorax. They are Renali. Every person in the command center froze. The Renali were a peaceful species known for art and medicine, not warfare. They had officially declared neutrality in all conflicts. They had no reason to be here. A transmission came through. On the screen appeared a Renali female with deep blue skin and calm eyes. She wore a military uniform that seemed almost wrong on her slender frame. Human vessels, this is Commander Scylla of the Renali Volunteer Fleet. We have monitored your distress calls. We are here to help. Darian found his voice. Commander, the Renali government declared neutrality. Your presence here violates your own laws. Scylla's expression did not change. Yes. We will be considered traitors when we return home. Some of us will face prison. Some will lose everything we have built. We came anyway. Why? The Renali commander tilted her head, a gesture that humans would later learn indicated deep emotion. Because we watched your transmissions. We saw your people carrying children to shelters. We heard your pilots volunteering for missions they knew would kill them. We saw a young species facing extinction with courage instead of despair. She paused. The assembly may consider you irrelevant. We do not. Darian could not speak. Tears blurred his vision. Form up with our fleet, Captain Webb, Scylla continued. Together, we will give your people time to escape. That is what we can offer. Time purchased with blood. I hope it is enough. The next 4 hours were hell. The combined human Renali fleet fought with everything they had. The Renali ships were not designed for war, but their pilots flew like warriors born. They threw themselves at Vorax interceptors to protect human transports. They absorbed missile strikes meant for evacuation shuttles. One by one, the Renali ships died. Commander Scylla's flagship, the Gentle Dawn, was the last to fall. She had positioned it directly between the final transport convoy and a Vorax carrier group. Her shields failed first, then her engines, then her hull. Her final transmission reached every human vessel. Remember that we chose you when no one else would. Remember that friendship is more valuable than safety. Carry this forward, young ones. Make the galaxy better than you found. The gentle dawn exploded, but behind it, the last transports jumped to safety. 8 million humans survived because 40 Renali ships gave everything. Captain Darian Webb recorded his own message that night, standing in the wreckage of the command center with smoke still rising around him. To any human who hears this in the years to come, we owe a debt that can never be fully repaid. The Renali saved us when we were nothing. They died for strangers. As long as humanity exists, we will remember their names. We will teach our children what they did, and if the Renali ever need us, we will answer. This is my promise. This is humanity's promise. He saved the file and sent it to Earth. 180 years later, his great-great-granddaughter would play it for the Galactic Assembly. Silence in the Galactic Assembly was worth more than gold. Every species knew how to talk, how to threaten, how to make grand speeches about justice and law, but true silence, the kind that followed Admiral Webb's testimony, meant that something had broken through the endless noise of politics. 1,200 representatives sat frozen, processing what they had just heard. High Arbiter Dren recovered first. His composure returned like a mask sliding into place. A moving story, he said. Carefully, but ancient history cannot override current law. The Renali violation is documented, the evidence is clear, sentiment does not change facts. Admiral Webb had not moved from the central podium. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the Arbiter with an expression that revealed nothing. You are correct, she replied. Sentiment does not change facts. But I am not here to appeal to sentiment. I am here to discuss facts, specifically, the facts outlined in the Compact of Reciprocal Defense. Something flickered across Dren's face. It was brief, but Webb caught it, the first crack in his confidence. Ambassador Ruth Cole stepped forward. She was younger than Webb, perhaps 45, with dark skin and eyes that had negotiated 100 treaties. In her hand she carried a document that glowed with holographic seals. 73 years ago, humanity proposed the Compact of Reciprocal Defense to this assembly, Cole explained. It was presented as a mutual aid agreement, nothing dramatic, just a promise that signatory species would support each other in times of crisis. Most species signed it as a diplomatic courtesy, very few read the full text. She activated the document, and its contents projected across the chamber's main display. Article 4, Section 9 states, any act of aggression, whether military, economic, or political, against a signatory species by assembly action shall be considered an act of aggression against all signatory species. Murmurs began spreading through the assembly. Representatives scrambled to access their own copies of the compact. The Renali signed this compact 41 years ago, Cole continued, so did humanity, so did 116 other species. If this assembly votes to sanction the Renali into starvation, you will be committing an act of aggression against a compact signatory. And under Article 4, that means you will be committing an act of aggression against Earth. High Arbiter Dren rose from his seat. This is manipulation. You cannot seriously claim that economic sanctions constitute an act of war. I am not claiming anything, Cole replied calmly. I am reading the treaty that your own hegemony signed. Perhaps you should have paid more attention when you agreed to it. The Vorath delegates began rapid communications among themselves. Their expressions had shifted from confident superiority to something close to alarm. Speaker Talon watched this exchange with growing wonder. He had come to the assembly expecting humiliation and death for his people. Instead, he was witnessing something he had never seen before, the Vorath hegemony being outmaneuvered by a species they considered inferior. Admiral Webb spoke again. Let me be clear about what happens if this vote proceeds. Humanity will consider sanctions against the Renali to be sanctions against ourselves. We will respond accordingly. Our fleet is not what it was 180 years ago. We now field over 4,000 warships. Our industrial capacity exceeds any single species in this sector, and we have a very, very long memory for those who harm our friends. The chamber had grown so quiet that Webb's next words seemed to echo. We remember everyone who helped us. We also remember everyone who stood aside while we suffered. Earth keeps records that go back centuries. We know which species offered aid during the burning years and which ones sent their condolences after the dying was finished. We have not forgotten, we will never forget. High Arbiter Dren's hands gripped the rail before him. You are threatening this assembly. No, Webb replied, I am explaining consequences. There is a difference. The Vorith have spent 6,000 years teaching the galaxy that power matters more than friendship. Humanity disagrees. We believe that how you treat others, especially when it costs you nothing to ignore them, defines what you truly are. She turned to face the full assembly, her voice rising. The Renali died for us when we were strangers. They sacrificed everything for a species they had barely met, simply because it was right. What kind of people would we be if we abandoned them now? What would that say about humanity? Ambassador Cole lowered her document. The choice is yours, High Arbiter. You can withdraw the sanctions and allow the Renali to continue as peaceful members of this community, or you can proceed with your vote and discover what happens when you threaten a species that humanity considers family. The word hung in the air, family. Most galactic species did not understand what that word meant to humans. They formed alliances, trade partnerships, mutual defense agreements. But family was something different. Family was blood and bone and memory stretching across generations. Speaker Talon finally spoke. His voice was rough with emotion. Commander Scylla believed in humanity, he said. She gave her life for people she had never met. I did not understand why until this moment. He looked at Admiral Webb. You came, after all this time, you came. Webb met his gaze. We always would have. All you ever had to do was ask. High Arbiter Dren called for a recess. The vote would wait. But in the corridors of Station Meridian, other conversations were already beginning. Conversations about how to destroy the Renali without triggering humanity's response. The Vorith were not finished. Secrets in the Vorith hegemony traveled through encrypted channels that had never been broken, or so they believed. Fleet Master Goran stood in the private chamber aboard High Arbiter Dren's personal vessel. 3 days after the assembly confrontation, the room was sealed against surveillance, its walls lined with signal-dampening materials that cost more than some planets earned in a year. Around a circular table sat 7 Vorith officials, the true power behind the hegemony's throne. The humans have humiliated us, Dren said, his voice carried barely controlled fury. They walked into our assembly and made us look like fools. This cannot stand. Goran remained silent. He was a military commander, not a politician. His job was to win battles, not to massage egos. But he had concerns about where this conversation was heading. The compact of reciprocal defense prevents direct action. One of the officials noted, if we proceed with sanctions, we risk war with Earth. Then we do not proceed with sanctions, Dren replied. He leaned forward, his scarred face twisting into something that might have been a smile. The sanctions were always just a tool. Our goal is the Renali's medical technology. If we cannot starve them into submission, we will simply eliminate them. Goran felt cold spreading through his chest. Eliminate them how? High Arbiter. There are groups throughout the galaxy that operate outside assembly law. Raiders, mercenaries, species that have no formal recognition. If such groups were to attack Sylvan, if they were to destroy the Renali's research facilities and perhaps their population centers as well, it would be a tragedy, but it would not be an act of the assembly. The other officials nodded. It was elegant, in a terrible way. The Vorith could claim innocence while their hired killers did the work. Goran spoke carefully. And if humanity suspects our involvement? Dren waved dismissively. What can they prove? The raiders we employ leave no witnesses. Even if the human suspect, suspicion is not evidence. They cannot invoke their precious compact against shadows. You underestimate them, Goran said. Every eye in the room turned toward him. I have studied human military history, he continued. It is my profession to understand potential enemies. The humans do not think like us. They do not require legal justification to act on their convictions. If they believe we are responsible for harming the Renali, even without proof, they will respond. Dren's expression hardened. Are you suggesting we should fear these creatures? They have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. I am suggesting that we should not mistake youth for weakness. The humans rose from a single world to a major power in less time than it takes most species to develop basic industry. They adapt, they remember, and they hold grudges that span generations. Goran paused. I have read accounts of human wars. They do not surrender easily. They do not forgive easily. If we become their enemy, we will remain their enemy forever. Silence followed his words. For a moment, Goran thought he might have changed their minds. Then Dren laughed. You have become timid in your old age, Fleet Master. the Vorith have dominated this galaxy for 6,000 years, we did not achieve this by cowering before newcomers, the raiders will be deployed, the Renali will fall, and the humans will learn that their sentiment cannot protect them from reality. The meeting ended, Goran returned to his quarters and sat alone in the darkness, considering what he had witnessed. He did not know that human intelligence had already intercepted every word. 3 hours later, Admiral Webb received a secure transmission in her temporary quarters on Station Meridian. The message contained the complete recording of the Vorith meeting, translated and annotated by Earth's finest analysts. She read it twice, then contacted Ambassador Cole. They are planning to use proxies, Webb explained, unaffiliated raiders to destroy Sylvan. They think they can murder an entire species and claim innocence. Cole's expression was grim. Can we bring this to the Assembly? The recording was obtained through methods that are technically illegal under galactic law. It would be inadmissible, and even if we presented it, Dren would simply deny everything. Then what do we do? Webb was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of the decision she had already made. We do not wait for them to act. We do not argue about evidence or legal procedures. We go to Sylvan, and we make it clear that anyone who attacks the Renali will face us directly. That could trigger a war, perhaps. But if we do nothing, billions of innocent people will die. I will not allow that. My ancestor made a promise, and I intend to keep it. She opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Admiral Webb requesting authorization for Operation Lasting Debt. I need the Third Fleet mobilized and en route to the Sylvan system within 48 hours. Full defensive deployment. The response came within minutes. Authorization granted. As Webb began coordinating the largest peacetime fleet movement in human history, a message arrived from an unexpected source. Fleet Master Goran had sent a private transmission. It contained one line. I warned them you would come. They did not listen. Perhaps they will learn. Webb saved the message. Not all enemies were truly enemies. Some were simply trapped in systems they did not build. The human fleet began to move, and the galaxy held its breath. Sylvan had never seen warships in its skies. The Renali homeworld was a place of gentle rains and silver forests, where cities floated on magnetic currents above endless blue oceans. For 3,000 years, its people had devoted themselves to medicine, art, and philosophy. They had no military tradition, no warrior caste, no monuments to conquest. Now, 217 human warships hung in orbit above their world. The Third Fleet had arrived in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming against the darkness of space, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and at their center the flagship, the enduring promise, named for the vow that Darian Webb had made nearly 2 centuries before. Admiral Nora Webb stood on the observation deck, watching the planet below. It was beautiful, more beautiful than she had imagined. Commander Scylla had died for this world. Now humanity would ensure that sacrifice was not wasted. Fleet positioned and holding, her tactical officer reported, all defensive grids active. If anything hostile enters this system, we will see it before it sees us. Good, maintain standard patrol rotations. I want eyes on every approach vector. Word of the fleet's arrival spread across the galaxy within hours. The Vorith's carefully recruited raiders received the news and immediately cancelled their contracts. Not one of them was willing to face Earth's military for any amount of payment. The shadows that Dren had counted on melted away in the face of human determination. 3 days later, the Galactic Assembly reconvened. High Arbiter Dren looked older than he had the week before. His coalition had fractured. Species that once followed Vorith leadership now questioned whether they wanted to be associated with a power that had nearly started an interstellar war over medical patents. His own council had begun suggesting he resign. Ambassador Ruth Cole stood at the central podium where Speaker Talon had once pleaded for mercy. The matter before this assembly is simple, she began. The accusations against the Renali were fabricated. The sanctions were designed to force them to surrender technology that rightfully belongs to them. This was never about law, it was about greed dressed in legal language. She let the word settle. Humanity does not claim to be perfect. We have made mistakes throughout our history, but we know the difference between justice and theft. We know that the powerful have a responsibility to protect the weak, not exploit them, and we know that true friendship is proven not in words but in action. Cole turned to face the Vorith delegation directly. You may have ruled this galaxy for 6,000 years, but your reign was built on fear, not respect. Species followed you because they were afraid of what would happen if they refused. That era is ending. She held up a data tablet. Humanity is announcing the formation of the Covenant of Remembered Kindness. We are extending permanent mutual defense agreements to every species that helped us during the burning years, the Renali first among them. Any attack on these species will be treated as an attack on Earth itself, not because of legal technicalities, but because we choose to honor those who honored us. 12 other species had already signed. By the end of the day, that number would triple. The galaxy was learning that there was another way, a path that valued loyalty over exploitation. High Arbiter Dren rose. You cannot simply reshape galactic politics because you disagree with our methods. Admiral Webb's voice came through the chamber's communication system. She had remained with her fleet, but her words carried clearly. We are not reshaping anything. We are simply being what we have always been, a species that remembers. You taught the galaxy that memory fades, that debts expire, that yesterday's friends are tomorrow's targets. We disagree. Commander Scylla died 180 years ago, and we speak her name today as if she were our sister. That is who we are. That will never change. The vote to withdraw sanctions was unanimous. Even the Vorath delegation supported it, having no other choice. High Arbiter Dren resigned the following morning. 1 week later, Admiral Webb received a visitor on the Enduring Promise. Speaker Talon had traveled from Sylvan's surface to stand on the observation deck beside her. Together, they watched his world turning slowly beneath them, safe now, protected by those who had no obligation to care but chose to anyway. I must ask you something, Talon said quietly. Other species let old debts fade, they move on. Why do humans hold on to gratitude so fiercely? Webb considered the question. It was one she had asked herself many times. Because we know what it means to be alone in the dark, she finally replied. Our species grew up on a single planet, surrounded by a universe we did not understand. We had no one to help us, no one to guide us. We made every mistake possible and suffered for each one. She turned to face the Renali elder, and then we reached the stars, and we were alone again. The galaxy looked at us and saw something small and unimportant. Most species ignored us, some tried to destroy us, but a few, a precious few, chose to see us as worthy of friendship. Her voice softened. We will never let that hand go, not because we have to, but because we remember how much it meant to have someone believe in us when we believed in nothing. Talon was silent for a long time. Commander Scylla would have liked you, he finally said. Webb smiled. I hope so. Everything I am exists because of what she gave. Below them, Sylvan turned peacefully in the light of its sun, and across the galaxy, species began to understand something new about humanity, that their gratitude was eternal, their memory absolute, and their loyalty unbreakable. Those who had helped them had nothing to fear, those who had harmed them would never be forgotten. This was humanity's promise to the stars.